Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Tech Shift F9 podcast. I'm your host, Maurizio, and this is the podcast where we talk about career pivots, transformations, and interesting paths in the age of technology. I'm super excited to have someone who comes with a very interesting background, Katriona Lee. Hi, Kat. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Maurizio. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Kat, you have worked essentially all your life in strategy. I've never come across someone that really started off from the beginning of one's career in strategy. And then you've taken that into entrepreneurship. You've launched your own companies. You're co-founder and CEO of Kaya Ventures, BVG Advisory, where you look at advisory and strategy from all different angles, both as a platform and with clients. And I mean, that sounds extremely interesting to me because I would suspect that nobody when they're at university thinks, hey, I want to be a strategist. But maybe you did. So tell us how that early interest in strategy came about.
Yeah, sure. Look, I mean, I was always one of those people that did things backwards, even as I was really, really little. And so I could see, I think, into the future, but struggled with the present, which is quite a funny thing to notice as you're young. So I would often got told stories of this from my parents and other people who observed me that said, I would dance before I could speak, swim before I could walk, sort of thing. And I think
Fabulous.
that plays into who I am as a person, where I always was like, I wonder what's going to happen in the future. It wasn't with anxiety. It was much more about just excited for the things that weren't knowable to me right now. And I think that really kind of came to bear as I started to make decisions about what I wanted to do with my future, with my career. And so, yeah, I did a lot of exploration throughout high school and uni, I guess, is just doing internships in all kinds of different domains. So I was an intern in a law firm doing legal research. I did a journalism stint writing articles for a local newspaper, all kinds of
Great.
stuff like that. And through that process, it was research, right? I wanted to be like, okay, if I played this out for the next 10 years, would I enjoy it? And all of those answers were no. So I was like, okay, what is a skill that, came naturally to me? It's like crystal balling into the future, and it doesn't tie me down to an industry. It doesn't tie me down to potentially a type of business or a construct. And so I guess that's how I fell into it. Yeah.
That's amazing. By the way, that's something I tell my kids, like go out, get internships, try out things. Doesn't matter whether you like them or not. In fact, if you
Mm.
don't like them, that's actually a good sign. At least you know what not to focus on.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I would agree with that.
and in the early part of your career, or let's call it your corporate career, you worked in a strategic executive position at Zero, Heathrow Airports, Korea, Thomson Reuters, right? What did all these experiences bring to the table now that you're an entrepreneur?
Oh, I mean, it gave me the opportunity to speak to so many different kinds of people at every level. I think the benefit of being a strategist, quote unquote, is that you are asked by different levels of the organization, different stakeholders to contribute your thoughts and bring to bear data and turn that data into insights and contribute to decision making. So very early on in my career, I was able to speak to the upper echelons of organizations because they're like, well, we can't make these decisions without help. So who do we call on? Probably the in-house strategy team, or go and find a management or strategy consultant to help us out because we need to churn through a lot of this intel really, really quickly, and we don't have the time or the internal capability or capacity to do it. And so I think that's a benefit of going into strategy so early in my career is the ability to communicate concisely, succinctly, complex information and turn that into two or three dot points that move the needle for the organization. So I think that's the really big thing. And the second is I've always had this structural sort of strategy for my own career, which was I don't want to niche down into an industry because the very best thing I could do for myself is exposure. So over-index on that. So many possible types of companies and commercial models as possible, as many industries, as many types of organizations and people. So whether they're sort of your professionals in the kind of corporate setting, whether that is working within the government, working for nonprofits, at the at the ground level in construction and actually building stuff. I've done all of that. And to me, it just allows me to have range and to connect with people wherever they are and however they see the world.
That's interesting. And I suppose your early experience working as a management consultant helped perhaps stimulate an interest on being exposed to many different industries. Um, but wouldn't you say that that also requires, now that you run consulting, strategic consulting business, um, requires a high level of self-confidence and basically security as to knowing how to get your next contract. And the reason I say that, I was a consultant for a few years of my career as well. And I picked a sector that I was very comfortable in. And I think there was always that pull towards like, should we try to do something a little bit broader, or should we stick to something that we know we're feeling comfortable in? So how did that process go for you? Do you even consider perhaps diving into one or two of the hot sectors at the time where you launched your consulting firm?
Uh, to be honest, not really. And the reason I say that
Yeah.
is because maybe I'm a sucker for punishment. I love the thrill of, I guess, and the buzz of learning something really rapidly. And I think there's a kind of connection and rapport that you build with your clients, sort of co-creating, learning, iterating alongside them. I think there's sort of a rawness and authenticity to um, the relationship when there's not always just me as an advisor knowing exactly what's going on, but also taking intelligence from the kind of current state of the landscape rather than predisposing yourself with a point of view. So that's kind of worked in my favor. But to be fair, because I've worked across so many different sectors in the past, I didn't really have a preference. I think I got used to having to just dive in and make some assumptions. And I think a lot of patterns emerge around businesses from a maturity level point of view and a commercial model point of view, whether they're SaaS, B2B, contract driven, whatever the case may be. So those are the patterns that made more sense to me. And the industry itself was less relevant. And I think that that might be a controversial point of view, but that's kind of how I see a problem. There's always a way of breaking it down and making it digestible, and helping make sense of it for your clients. And then I guess alternatively, looking at all of this, I was always sort of wanting to build a business that was an anti-traditional consulting business
Okay.
because I saw the opportunities for improvement to, a more kind of rigid, structured model where I think we could be more dynamic. And I think clients, from that point of view as well, a bit more forgiving around, working with you and researching it and growing with you as well.
So to me, that means that you seem to have a fairly high touch approach with your clients and potential clients, and that's great. But isn't that also something that is a little bit challenging to do this day and age, where relationships as well as I guess business is getting are getting a little bit more, I don't want to say decentralized, but a little bit more detached. Like there's so many platforms that offer services. There are so many service providers. Markets are fairly open. I know you live and work in Australia, but still, I mean, you could have consultants from all over the globe pitching your own clients. So how do you develop in this day and age a high touch, strong relationship with clients in so many different industries?
Oh, look, I mean, if I said to you that I've perfectly solved that problem, I would be lying. But you know what? I think the challenge around globalization is that it's really exciting. And the way to solve that is to build really strong strategic partners all around the world in different domains. So at the end of the day, to your point, it's impossible to be great at absolutely everything. So
Sure.
whilst I say that, I'm largely industry agnostic, I am, for example, a bit better on sort of fintech, SaaS, B2B, and I don't claim to be an e-com expert, but I'll always have somebody like that that's at my disposal who I've, really pre-qualified, really connected with. And so there's always a high touch from a perspective of, bringing to bear the very best experts for my clients, but also acknowledging that, there are moments in time when I'm not the best person to solve for them. So how do you make sure you give them, great options? So I think that's sort of the key to it. The second is leading with empathy. I know that sounds a little bit cliched, but often the difference between an advisor and a confidant is that ability to sort of be really empathetic to your client's journey. And I think, as I'm honing in on small business owners, startups, scale ups, entrepreneurs in general as my target audience, I'm able to really relate to that because I'm building businesses from scratch. And whether it's within my advisory business as an investor or as a venture builder, I think, that relatedness and that relevance, I think people connect with really well. And so that's definitely a differentiator. And for me, as well, is bringing to bear all of my cultural nuances as well, being a woman of color and really somebody who's lived in, multiple countries, speak multiple languages. I think, yeah, that still is a unique position to bring, east to west, and also, the perspectives of being in corporate, the best practices, and then turning those little pieces into weapons, I guess, to execute at the lower end of the market as well. So that's a lot of different things,
It
and
is.
so applying at the right time.
Easier said than done, but it definitely you cast a very wide net of best practices, as you just mentioned. But something that piqued my interest is when you mentioned about putting together the right team of advisors or consultants. And right off the bat, I think consultants come in with a how should I put it politely? Not come across extremely well with clients. Whenever you engage a consultant, there's always some friction. I can tell. I mean, I use
Yeah.
consultants, and I was one, so I saw both sides of the coin, so to say. Uh, but so, how is your team building and resource gathering, if that's for lack of a better word, evolved over time? And the reason I ask is because I can see how you've been building your career, you've been building your businesses now, and it's absolutely fundamental to get the right team in. But how's that changed for you over time? How do you pick the winners? How do you make sure that you don't have turnovers or people don't steal your clients and all the very practical things that can derail, a startup or a new business like yours?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. And I'm really big on culture. Because you're absolutely right. Like a fantastic person can make or break your business and really help you level up. So for me, I guess two things. The first is until I get really a lot of clarity on exactly what I want that person to do, I don't hire. I don't preempt in the sense that, because I don't want them to have time lag. I want them to be able to jump in and get exciting opportunities and things to do to really challenge and to ramp up. So, it's not to say that I don't invest ahead of the curve. I do a little bit, but not so far that there's loss of morale. So I think it's about making sure that you're, doing resource planning really, really well. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to really get to know these people through the screening process, but also in a conversational way, who they are as individuals, what motivates them, what kind of person are they intrinsically, and what kind of person are they when no one's looking. I think getting to know these people at the fundamental levels of who they are is vitally important, particularly from an early employee point of view, right? They're over-indexed on the impact they could have on my business versus later stage employees. So for me, it's front loading the effort to really get to know them, give them a ton of tools to set them up for success, even if it means spending a bit more than I would have otherwise. For later stage employees, I think that's the right thing to do. And building a connection with them, yeah, right off the bat. So to me, those are the two things: being vulnerable enough to be like, hey, here are the things I need help with. Here's what I'm not good at. And here's why you're on board, right? Because you're great at the things I'm not so good at, and sort of help balance each other out a bit.
It's a very well-structured approach. Hats off to you. But on a more personal level, I mean, you've worked with a number of startups, for example, helped them raise a considerable amount of money, both in terms of fundraising and exits. And, we've heard stories about startup founders being somewhat volatile, somewhat unique. They have strong personalities. Um, how has it, but I suppose in your early part of your career, you were dealing mostly with, people like me, with middle-aged that have seen quite a few things in the world. How have you coped with this generation of tech guys, tech people? in your strategic work?
Yeah, I guess the requirements of quarterbacking fundraising has been different. So previously with clients that had, to your point, lots of life experience, they knew their narratives, right? They knew where they were going, why they were there, what they brought to bear, what experience made sense and could be applied in whatever context that they're sort of looking at. The challenge with, I guess, younger entrepreneurs building businesses is one, they lack a bit of life experience, to be honest, and probably a little less resilient because they've not had to face as much disappointment or rejection. And the third is that because they've not had as many times, as much time to kind of contemplate their existence, their purpose, and all of that, the core skill that's missing is storytelling. And so,
Mm.
actually, what I've realized from sort of collating and doing analysis and sort of, you know, thinking about the opportunity, sizing the opportunity and quantifying that, I've moved more to the qualitative stuff, which is tech guys are really great at that stuff. They're like, oh, here's the TAM, this is the, the SAM, and here's the slice of it that I can access, and here's how I'm going to do it, right? They're great at doing that because they know how to execute on the product. But what they can't do is connect with every kind of different types of audiences and different stakeholders or potential shareholders and go, here's my story. Here's why I'm doing it. Here's why this is going to be game changing and make it really, really simple and really accessible. And so that's what I found is the shift from, yeah, being much more quant focused and, kind of typical M&A type and, market sizing, market research type work to tell me who you are and how do we then translate that into something really exciting, really compelling, really meaningful for the market. Yeah.
So that's great. Kat, on top of the work that you do with your companies, you're also a fractional chief a strategy officer, board advisor. You're really juggling a lot of balls up in the air. Uh, and by the way, a lot of people that come on my podcast have that kind of profile. I always ask the same question: how do you do it? How do you maintain mental sanity, and how do you maintain your energy levels?
Yeah, I focus on two main things. The first is curating my own advisory board. I'm sure you've heard that multiple times from people, but I really lean into my loved ones, my parents, my close friends, my partner, and really just really nurture those relationships and ask them to tell me when I'm burning out or I'm showing signals of being exhausted or, and just tell them, don't be shy. Just let me know if I look terrible. I've got bigger eye bags than eyes themselves. Please let me know because, they hold me accountable to taking care of myself. And equally, I do the same for them. I think, not just a career advisory board or your businesses and your ventures, require an advisory board. I think a well-being advisory board is incredibly important. And only those that truly love you and care about your well-being will tell you to stop and listen to your health and well-being and take a break. So that's one strategy. And the second is I'm a massive gym buff. I love to exercise, love going out in nature and doing outdoor activities and just getting limber. So whenever possible, if I'm not in front of a screen and I don't have to be, I'm on the phone in meetings, going on foot, going for a walk, stretching my legs, doing something. And that really helps break up the time that I am, in solid work mode. It just keeps me energized and stops me from getting frayed at the edges. So that's definitely a strategy. And overall, I guess tying all of those things together is the ability to let go. So
Okay.
don't hold on to everything and control the outcome of everything. And it goes back to hiring a great team. If you have entrusted responsibilities to your team, you got to lean into the fact that they'll probably likely surprise you by outperforming your expectations. So you don't have to be the person that does everything. You can lean into their capabilities, their skills to execute for you. So I'm really learning to do that, let go, because without letting go, there's no way to scale.
And Kat, let's cast our minds back maybe a couple of years or so, when you decided to move into entrepreneurship and
Yeah.
start your own business. And you didn't just start one, you started a couple. And as I said, you are keeping yourself very busy. What were some of the thoughts that came across your mind in terms of things that you felt you had to get yourself ready for to make this
Mm.
jump, and how did you do it? Or was it more of a spur of the moment, like say, I'm done with this, I gotta do it, approach?
No, I think I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur pretty early on in my career. Part of the sort of seeing into the future thing, I knew that the framework of working for other people was just not aligned to my personality. I'm a bit of a risk taker, a bit of a strange character in general. I like to do things, my way. And I find that to be difficult when you have to operate within the confines and structure of somebody else's organization. So gut feel told me that this was always going to be the direction I headed down. So the three key skills I focused on polishing was firstly, how to be well spoken and relatable as much as possible. How do you connect with people using words and using words deliberately and purposefully? I think that's the one key skill. The second is the ability to articulate visually what it is that I'm trying to communicate. So I think communication in general is the core thread to all of this, spoken and visual. And then the third was just really lean into knowing that you got to back yourself. There will be a lot of rejection, a lot of people saying no, people who question your credibility, whatever the case may be. And you just got to stay firm. So, like shoring up and psyching myself up took a little while. But as I got more confident in the way I communicate, in my ability and I guess, my trade craft from a strategy point of view, that, got to a level where I was like, okay, would I pay for it if I was an external objective person and if I felt like I would? Then I guess I'm ready. But there's no perfect time. I just sort of built to it over and over again and said, okay, if I hit those three pillars and I feel like I'm ready to go, then who's to say I'm not ready?
Absolutely. And just to dig in a little further on that, you started your business and you had to deal with a lot of what I would say non-fun stuff, which is, not just doing the work, but actually taking
Yeah.
care of the companies,
Yeah.
looking after all sorts of back office things. Technology plays a big part today in enabling a lot of people becoming entrepreneurs. So how's your relationship been with technology over the years, and how's that changed, perhaps?
I would say that I was not a native practitioner of technology. I was always like, if you can solve it, with Excel formulas and with talking to people, then that's the way to go. But over time, I realized that, to your point, in order to gain efficiency, to gain scale, to gain sort of virality, you need to have infrastructure that you can scale, and infrastructure you can replicate, and then ideally become a platform business that enables you to license it out, meaning there's no direct correlation between effort and reward. I think breaking that equation was, or learning that breaking that equation enables me to grow businesses was sort of the tipping point and the realization for me. And so, in terms of how I run my business today, through as a result of those learnings, I really focus on picking the piece of technology or the software that does a specific job the best. So, whether it's a CRM, whether it's a collaboration and project tracking tool, whether it's a communication platform, whatever the case may be, I pick the best of its class for that particular purpose and then find a strong way to integrate and automate. So I love automations. And maybe people will say, oh, does that create a lot of latency? I was like, perhaps. But if you trust in the fact that each of the parts of the value chain is really, really strong, then process is the thing that glues them together. And then the great team on top of it is what powers it all. So I'm a big believer in technology applied in the right ways, and hopefully helps us gain the efficiency and momentum to really make people shine.
I couldn't agree more. And I was trying to think of something to counterpoint you, but I just can't. I'm a huge believer in exactly the same. Even as a small startup, to implement processes and have a structure about doing things just allows you to scale up much faster. And it doesn't mean that you can't revise and upgrade your processes, but you gotta have something. And unfortunately, some of the narrative that's been sold to us over the years about very successful entrepreneurs are people that wing it and have gut feels rather than use the head. Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but you know, yeah, I think it's good to have a strong process to back you up. But Kat, just I guess one last question for you, if you don't mind. Looking ahead, uh, what's up for Katriona Lee over the next few years?
Yeah, look, one of the opportunities I'm really, really excited about is, um, I mentioned a bit earlier is sort of the bridging of East and West. And to me, Australia, where I predominantly operate, so or across ANZ, really is such a tiny market, right? In the grand scheme of stuff. We've got great innovation, great entrepreneurs, but you know, as far as capital goes, it's limited. So how do we get access to new capital, exciting capital, passionate capital, and patient capital
Mm.
that enables entrepreneurs to go global? And that's by expanding into Southeast Asia, emerging markets, maybe, North America and Europe. So globalization and borderless relationship building for me is definitely a key theme for the next couple of years. And yeah, the second is there are still so many barriers to entrepreneurship, whether it's, for women, whether it's people from minority backgrounds and, diverse educational backgrounds. To me, I think there's a lot of excitement and energy around those demographics that I'd love to sort of push the envelope on a little bit and hopefully support in some shape or form. Don't exactly know what that looks like just
Mm.
yet. And I'm working through that. But again, it's another sort of thread and theme that I'm really excited about. And yeah, and hopefully Core Kaya, the business strategy platform that I've built and gained some great traction with over the last couple of years can go further and help lots of entrepreneurs around the world as well.
I'd love to have you back. Tell me all about it. Kat, thanks so
Yeah,
much for being on the show. Loved having you here.
thank you so much. I loved our conversation. Cheers.
Well, folks, that's the end of another episode. Thank you for listening. Stay cool, stay positive,